That one was at TGS. I just felt like that was a representative. So, my peak of responsibility at Game Informer actually came from 2 cover stories that I had to write. One, and they're both world exclusives. Like, since I left Game Informer, I think it's the #4 publication in the world now, behind like the AARP magazine. So it's huge. So it was a massive and totally terrifying responsibility. The first one was Portal 2, and the second one was Tomb Raider. So I would spend weeks calling the developers, working on negotiating content. This is how many screens we need. This is what we need for our online exclusive. Prepping interviews, doing tons of research, and then drafting and writing a 10-page feature. And in addition, we had online content for a month that we had to roll out, so that was a lot of work. So that led to my new position, and like I said, I wanted to work for Game Informer since I was 16. So the only thing in the entire world that could get me to leave Game Informer is literally Lara Croft, because while I wanted to work at Game Informer, I wanted to be Lara Croft. Like, if there was anything, it was that. And I still can't wrap my head around it because like I wanted to be Lara Croft when I was younger, and now I'm helping to shape Lara's future, which is just this weird thing. Like it's bizarre. I'm still totally dumbstruck by it. So here's the 2 covers. That's right. All right. So what can you take away from what I just told you about Game Informer? You have to like writing. Every single thing you do during the day will focus on writing. All the responsibilities boil down to communication through the written word, whether it's composing emails, because you're going to be doing that a lot. It's amazing how much time talking about when you're going to get this preview code or review code or what's the embargo for this. It's tons of emails to make sure that your content's ready. Again, news, interviews, reviews, proofing. You really have to have a very strong grasp of written word. That's first and foremost. The ability to turn around content quickly is paramount. Working well under pressure, because you will constantly be under pressure. The ability to take criticism well is actually pretty important, because everybody's opinionated, everybody has different writing styles, so you need to be able to take that and think critically and work well with others, because you're constantly going to be interacting with other people. The industry definitely doesn't work in a bubble, so you have to be pretty social and whatnot. So, after leaving Game Informer, I got my job at Crystal Dynamics, and a lot of people ask me, what does a community manager do? Because they actually think that I just sit on Facebook and Twitter all day, and like, that's all I do. I think my parents even still think that's what I do. I'm trying to convince them it's not. So, a community manager has to have a strong understanding of social tools, obviously, Facebook, Twitter, Tumblr, but it's not just knowing how to use them. It's knowing how to use the edge ranking system on Facebook to be able to tell when your post from your page is going to leave the feed of most consumers, because then you know when the optimal time is to post another thing. There's a lot of work and a lot of analytics in it. So data analysis is very important, public relations, brand new franchise development, event planning, and lots more. So right now my workload is basically email and forward-facing communication in the morning, working on PR plans, licensing opportunities, and product partnerships, which I love. I love being able to be like, yeah, this is a great company. I like working with them. We should do something with them. Conceptualizing and realizing brand initiatives. This past year, October, I put together 15 years of Tomb Raider and commissioned a bunch of artists to do some really cool original art, and it was amazing to be able to work with like Andy Park, one of my favorite comic book artists in the world, and be like, will you draw Lara for me? So monitoring the product and studio sentiment is hugely important. Monitoring press coverage, fan discussions. I do a lot of international check-ins with Square Enix headquarters in like different countries, so lots of late night calls or early morning calls, preparing global asset drops, travel, demoing the game, hosting community events, monthly newsletters, podcasts, and every once in a while they ask me to do temporary VO, and I'm like, I'm not doing the accent, I'm just going to just read it. So Lara then is from Minnesota. I also get to test the game every once in a while, which is exciting, and I do some design work. So again, what you can take away from this is that wearing multiple hats is common across the entire industry. You will very rarely be relegated to like one thing. Whenever you have an opportunity to diversify your skill sets, you are going to make yourself a significantly more attractive candidate to potential employers. Again, no 2 days are alike, and the only real downside I can say to this job is that I represent a global brand, and there are always Tomb Raider fans awake somewhere in the world. So it's very hard to disconnect. I actually tweeted this morning, I was like, I'm going to leave my computer, I swear. And then my boss told me, yes, leave, I'm not responding to any of your emails today because you're on PTO. So it's very hard to like actually stop working when you're working with such a big global brand. So I get a lot of people that ask, if you're on the fence, if you don't know if you want to do press or you want to do dev, they're both fantastic. Bottom line is I feel like I'm more at home at the dev side. I knew that eventually I'd want to trade critiquing for creating, but they both have fantastic, pluses to them. So when you're press, you tend to be a generalist rather than a specialist. So you need to know a lot, or you need to know a little about a lot of things. So you may have a beat, like you may be the sports game guy, or you may be, the RPG person, but still you're going to be demoing and previewing tons of games and tons of news and doing lots of interviews, and you need to just kind of have your eye on a lot of things. Again, you have to digest a ton of content from a lot of different sources. Where on the dev side, you're a specialist rather than generalist. So I eat, sleep, and breathe Tomb Raider. And you have to kind of pour everything you have wholeheartedly into one or two products. And I think, in my opinion, I like that sense of ownership. Even though I'm basically looking at the same sort of materials every day over and over and over, that ownership I feel, I can't wait to get the box out there in retail and look at it and say, I had a hand in this. So it's really up to personal preference, whether you want to expand into as much as you can, or if you just want to hone your skills into one project. So I get this question a lot. Is journalism a good way to break into development? The answer is yes, but I think that the answer is yes because networking. You'll be interviewing people in the game industry, you'll start making connections in the game industry, you'll learn more about the game industry because again, you have that breadth. I'm excited, can't you tell? But I feel like it's somewhat disingenuous to do that, and I worry a little bit about it. Because games are really infiltrating every aspect of our lives, right? So health and science and education, and I think that the press has a very important responsibility to the consumer, and it shouldn't be taken lightly or looked at as a stepping stone. So you could say, did you do that? The difference, what I think, is that there is lots of organic movement between press and dev. There's actually a lot of press go on to become developers. I've actually seen vice versa. Devs go to PR or PR go to press, and there's a lot of movement between facets of the industry. But the difference is, I'm just saying, don't look at it as a stepping stone. Don't treat it as a pit stop because it is such an important responsibility. So always work your hardest, write with honesty and integrity while you're a member of the press. And don't look at like a temporary gig because then you might not invest yourself fully. But if you don't invest yourself, the chances are doors aren't going to open for you. So it's kind of, it goes naturally. If you work your butt off no matter what, then doors are going to open for you and you will have earned it while still doing a really good job. So this one, oh man, my student loan debt makes me want to say, yes, you have to go to school, because then I would feel vindicated in that. So, it has been I've very begrudgingly written a slide. It is not imperative that you go to school. It is important though. Many prominent game veterans, whether they're dev or journalists, they didn't go to school, or they studied unrelated fields, like they were metal fabricators. I mean, seriously, that's just how it happened when the industry boomed, because they helped establish the industry. They laid the foundation, which is now turned into school curriculum. So there just wasn't, like, you couldn't go to school for game design in '85. You could learn software, but yeah, so you talk to most industry veterans and they didn't go to school. However, standards are shifting now. Just because you hear that most people didn't go to school doesn't mean that that isn't changing. For press, the most common group that do try to secure a secondary education are the younger crowd, the people just getting into it now. They either went to school for journalism, technical writing, creative writing, liberal arts, English, and they tend to be more attractive job candidates. Having a secondary degree in multimedia design makes it even better. I've heard that from a lot of people, that that's just a fantastic route to go. And for dev, it's kind of hard to answer that question because your specialty really dictates whether or not you should be going to school. There's, like, concept artists kind of tend to develop their portfolios. They've been honing their art skills on their own for years and years and years, and so it's more organic. Whereas programmers, you have to learn a whole new language and maybe have access to software that you wouldn't have access to if you weren't at school. So it depends on what you're looking to specialize in. but all recruitment specialists that I've talked to say the bottom line is it has to boil down to an impressive portfolio. Your work will speak for itself. If your resume doesn't have college on it, but your portfolio is stunning, they're going to ultimately go with your portfolio. So again, my next slide is going to say why it's probably important to go to school, but if you can get that portfolio without having a secondary education, then more power to you. So this is actually really important. It's one that if you are serious about getting into the game industry, especially the dev side, go to my site and click on the fact I have this huge list of extended resources with tons of articles on how to break into specialties. The Respawn Entertainment one is fantastic. They break down every single concept art, programming, audio, producers, every single thing they break down, the common daily tasks, they break down what someone would look for on their resume, what your portfolio should be. For artists, they're like, we need you to have experience in these types of shaders, and seriously, they break it down for you bullet point by bullet point what they will be looking for. So it's also a good resource to kind of see what kind of jobs are available on the dev side. So if you're on the fence, if you're like, I think I want to do something game related, but you don't know, maybe you want to go into maybe you want to be a producer, or maybe you want to go into programming. So it's a fantastic resource. Again, not imperative, but important. So these are the reasons, if you're on the fence about going to school for something related to gaming, here are the reasons I think you should. So it's a structured education with a clear timeline. I think that maybe if you teach yourself in your room these skills, there's the chance that you could just keep teaching yourself slowly over 10 years. And this is an expedited process that gives you some structure. Your education won't be in a bubble. Again, you won't just be sitting by yourself teaching yourself curriculum. You'll interact with other people, which I think is hugely important. It'll teach you about time management, which again, like I said, is hugely important. It'll give you the ability to work with peers, learn how to critique creative works, which is very important in both writing and the dev side. Learn to iterate upon feedback. Iteration is key. Everything in writing is iterative, dev is iterative, everything is iterative because you just keep getting feedback by the group. It has discounted book and software programs, libraries, computer labs, machine shops, all these things that you don't have access to if you're not at school. And mandatory internships are forced networking. And then a lot of schools are going to want to brag about you once you graduate, so they'll help you with job placement. So again, all of this I think is extremely important. So again, the degree isn't imperative, hard work and talent is. I said this already, if you can get a really impressive portfolio without attending school, then that's great. I mean, skipping the student loan debt would be fantastic, but there's a lot of reasons where it does pay off and it's worth it. Okay, I'm not going to go too in depth. I only have one slide on this, but in my fact, I have 10 questions relating to being specifically a female in the game industry. I did want to address some of this. It's great because I do see some females in the room. Awesome. So, is it harder to get a job in the industry as a female? The answer is yes and no. So the no part is networking, like I said, is absolutely imperative. So as a minority, being female, there's never a line for the restrooms at gaming conventions. If you are being a minority, you are more likely to be remembered. People you network with are more likely to remember you. So your resume may end up at the top of a pile because they say, oh, I know that name. I've put a face to that name, rather than, being, it's just less easy to be forgotten. So that's why, that's kind of the boon you get from being a female. But it is a little bit harder to earn respect as a female in the game industry, whereas it's kind of just given to your male counterparts. I want to say that this has never stemmed from either Game Informer or Crystal Dynamics. They've been fantastic. It's always been from third parties. I would often show up to interviews and be grilled as to how I got my job. And I had a couple of people ask if I was hired to fill the pretty face quota, implying that I didn't know what I was talking about, which is like a backhanded compliment, but it's still extremely insulting in my opinion. And that was a very tame example of bad behavior. It's kind of the same thing that happened when I used to work at Game Crazy in college. People would always ask for the male retail counterparts because they just assumed I didn't know what I was talking about. So it's a little frustrating. I don't want to dive into it too much more because there were some fairly unsavory experiences that I had to deal with. But if you are concerned about something like this, feel free to come and talk to me after and we can discuss it if you're concerned. I just want to say the industry is not full of barbarians. 99% of people are good. It's just every once in a while you get a couple people that it's kind of demoralizing and you need to maybe be prepared for it and be ready with a disarming quip or something to show off how intelligent and how much you deserve to be in the industry. So wanted to address that at least on a superficial level. 10:35. Okay. This one I get a lot too. I have a fantastic idea for a game. Who do I contact? This is so hard to tell people.